everybody, welcome. So today's panel is on mental health in the sporting industry, and we have lovely perspectives to gather from our two panelists here.
Yes, hey everybody, I'm Julian Gressel. Been a professional soccer player for now 8 years and currently play for Inter Miami here. Yeah, it's been a journey for me throughout, ever since I turned pro really. I just said it before, I almost went to school here, but I ended up going to Providence College in Rhode Island instead. It was between the two schools, so I made my way here eventually. Yeah, excited to be here, and yeah, I mean, we deal with mental health issues and things that come up, as I've recently learned, you know, throughout all my life obviously, but there's different challenges that arise being a professional athlete, and I had just, you know, over the last year probably had a pretty big spell of where I've gotten more aware of all those things, and you know, I recently spoke up on my podcast about kind of how important it was for me to do therapy and all these types of things. So I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit, but I'm excited to be here and kind of yeah, talk about it a little bit from my perspective as a professional athlete.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Pettit. I am not a professional athlete. I'm a professor of psychology and executive director of the Center for Children and Families here at FIU. I'm a licensed psychologist. My expertise is on anxiety, depression, and suicidal behaviors in children and adolescents. So as we were talking a moment ago, we see anxiety and some of these other issues arise pretty commonly in young people, especially when they are trying to perform at the highest levels, including highest levels of sports. And we deal with some of these problems and try to help kids develop the skills they need to manage anxiety and related problems, and then apply those skills to contexts such as sports. So very happy to be here, very grateful to Inter Miami and FIU for organizing this event on an important topic.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I just realized I didn't introduce myself. So I'm Kristen Nichols. I'm also a psychology professor, and I'm the director of the Professional Counseling Psychology Master's Program. And I'm very grateful to have all of my students here today who are training to become licensed therapists. I'm a licensed mental health counselor as well. So they're able to learn from the experiences of both Jeremy and Julian as we talk about these issues today. So thank you all for coming. So for our first question, how does mental health impact athletic performance both positively and negatively? And you can share specific examples from your life or for research that can illustrate this.
Okay.
You're next to me, you win.
All right, I'll start. Yeah, I mean, in terms of on-field performance, it's hugely impactful, right? I think, yeah, our sport is very physical, especially soccer, where, you know, obviously you got to be fit, you got to be ready to do the tasks that you need to do from a physical standpoint. But if you're not there mentally and you're not checked in into what the game plan is, or even you know, things that it's as simple as having a good first touch, you know, for example, that will then lead to a good pass or a good outcome. It's those types of things that hugely impact the game, and the mentality and your mental health in those moments is in my opinion hugely important. In terms of specific examples, I mean, there's moments where I have two young daughters, for example, and over the last year or 2 years we've been, I was in DC 2 years ago, then I moved to Vancouver for a year, and then to Columbus for 6 months, and now here in Miami. So we've gone through a lot, and my kids are 3.5 and 11 months. So you can see kind of how much we've been through in terms of off the field things, and like I would be lying if I said that once I step on the field everything goes out the window. It really doesn't. I am sometimes on the field in quiet mode, not really when the action is happening. That's when it really is. You know, you kind of just black out a little bit and you just play the game. But when there's quiet moments and you have moments to kind of think, those things pop up, and those things pop in your head of like, okay, my wife's in the stands. I hope that the kids are behaving. I hope that she's doing okay. Or when she's at home or when she's on the way, I sometimes check the phone to see where she is and if she's going to be there on time. You know, those things really matter. And you know, and then also for us as professional athletes, our lives are so short-lived in a sense, right? Where we have contracts that usually go a few years. Where in a situation last year I was in that my contract would run out at the end of the season. So in 2023, my contract was running out at the end of the year, and I had just gotten new to Columbus. They had told me okay, we want to make a new deal with you. We want to, secure the long-term finances a little bit. Obviously from my side, it was very important to me to know kind of what's coming. And then all of a sudden, it just went away. I didn't play anymore. Went from starting almost every game to not really playing anymore. And the contract talks cooled off, where they then told me, hey, we're not really interested in re-signing you. And it's those types of things that make a huge impact on performance. And in terms of training, my motivation kind of went out the window at times. And I was always a guy that prided myself in being there all the time to work hard. I wanted to come in early, do the work, stay late, do the work, be a guy that leads by example in that way. And there was times last year where I was the last one in the building and the first one out of the building. I just didn't really want to have anything to do with, not so much my teammates or anything. It really wasn't about that relationship. It was just the feelings that I had inside of me and that I had to kind of deal with, and that was really, really difficult. And I'm really grateful for having a great wife to kind of being able to talk to. And she then also pushed me to kind of make the step and to reach for some help in terms of mental health. But all these things affect us hugely on the field. And that's something that I don't do extra recovery for, something that I don't do extra training for, that I could be better at. And that mental state really, really impacts our performance, I think, on a daily basis, and it's really, really important.
Thank you so much for sharing those experiences. Sometimes it's easy to forget and not recognize that even elite athletes are human just like the rest of us and experience all the same challenges that we do. And Kristen, I'm really glad that you asked about the positive and the negative aspects, because many times we tend to think of only one side of the coin without having a balanced perspective and recognizing that there are both positive and negative aspects at play here. Speaking of the positive sides, the research shows that overall, involvement in athletics is associated with more positive mental health, especially when it comes to team sports such as soccer. The data are a little more mixed when it comes to individual sports such as track and field or tennis. Some studies actually indicate that those participating in those sports can be associated with poorer mental health, somewhat surprisingly. And the data overall also indicate that about a third of college athletes and professional athletes experience mental illness at some point during their participation in athletics. So it's a very common sort of experience, and sadly only about 1 in 10 seek out help for those problems. So we know there's a big gap between the experience of mental health issues and receiving help to navigate through those issues. And it's really great when there are support systems in place, such as a spouse or friends or others who can step up and help during those difficult moments and challenges that athletes are going through.
Thank you. I think when people think about mental health in sports, they think about how can you improve your sports performance, but it's not really about that, right? Like, it's how can you improve the mental health of the athlete to make them a better performer. So that leads me to my next question. What are some of the biggest challenges and stigmas that athletes face regarding mental health? So as an athlete, have you faced that yourself?
I think, there's unfortunately still a somewhat of a stigma around where I feel like it's getting better, but yes, I think it always is a big step. It always takes too long almost to kind of reach out, and I think the mental health side, like you said, trying to make the athlete perform better. I think having a sports psychologist, for example, on teams regularly, on professional teams, is still not the norm, where, it doesn't have to be a full psychologist that needs to be there all the time to really go through sessions or whatever, but I think, there's ways that you can improve your mental health to really help with performance. And those stigmas are certainly still there, where, like you said, people forget that we're regular human beings as well, where if you talk about, receiving comments on social media, you see that a lot about, racism. Obviously it always has the headlines, but I experience that every single time I post something. I'm not gonna lie, there's always comments about, you need to do this better, you need to play better, just what are you doing, like, why are you even a professional soccer player? It's those types of things that even, come up and that I see, and then it's really, really tough sometimes to really block that out. But yeah, it's those types of things of of learning how to deal with it, and these moments have really kind of helped me as of late, especially to kind of cope with those and really get a better handle of what it's like to kind of be thrown into the kind of those buckets and be able to help, get help, seek help through professional services, and I think we'll touch on that in a little bit, but unfortunately the stigma is still there, and it is getting better, I think, and teams are doing more to really provide us with the help that we need. Our league is doing a lot, the Players Association that we have is doing a lot, and as of recently actually Inter Miami is doing a lot as well to kind of get us help if we need it. But to get to that point, to really make that first step, it's really still up to us. And that sometimes, in my opinion, maybe takes a little bit too long to help, young kids, for example, right away starting their career out. They just, came from college or through the academy and just signed this contract, a professional contract. Think they've made it, and then all of a sudden, okay, you don't play. What happens? You all of a sudden you're the biggest guy in your friends group, everybody loves you, but then all of a sudden you don't perform or you don't play, or kind of what happens, and why? And you have all these questions and things arise, and then it just takes too long for them to realize and really be able to get help and seek help of how to deal with those types of things. And I think just awareness and all these types of panels, and that's why I also spoke out about it. Hopefully helps people to kind of take that first step in initiative.
In many sports cultures, there's a strong emphasis on toughness, on self-reliance, resilience, and that certainly has some good aspects and qualities to it, but it can also lead to the perception that if I ask for help, that's a sign of weakness, and that can discourage seeking help when it's needed, and discourage people from taking that first step. There also can be concerns about how this might negatively impact one's career. So maybe there's the belief that if I acknowledge or admit to having some struggles with mental health, that might diminish some of my opportunities. Maybe teammates, coaches, sponsors may view me as less capable if I admit to that, and it may diminish my future opportunities. So there are lots of places where continued work needs to happen to reduce this stigma. I'm really happy to hear that steps are being taken in the league and with Inter Miami in particular. Hope that continues, because until we are able to have these open conversations like we're having today, the stigma unfortunately is going to persist, and people who need help are not going to reach out and access it. One other thing I'll mention related to barriers, I would imagine logistical issues can also present barriers. So again, I'm not a professional athlete, but I can imagine your schedule is extremely busy with training demands, with a lot of travel, moving from place to place. And for student athletes, they also have the demands of courses and academics, studying for tests. I would imagine it can be hard to find time in that schedule to engage in mental health promotion type behaviors, as well as finding the private and confidential settings where one might seek out help from a mental health professional.
Thank you both. How do these challenges differ at various levels of competition from amateur to professional? What's been your experience? You've mentioned Inter Miami has done a lot. What's been your experience at lower levels of sport, right? Youth sport, amateur sport? Because I would imagine that it differs widely.
Yeah, it definitely does, and I honestly haven't, been exposed or been haven't seen the type of commitment to it as much. I think at DC United, when I was there was a different professional club. We had a sports psychologist on the team full time. She was always there to kind of talk to us more about the game and everything, but not so much about off the field stuff or like family type things or real therapy. But it was really more about mentality around the game and mentality around if you feel tired or those types of things. And but yeah, amateur, when I was, like I said, I came over from Germany 10 years ago now, 10.5 years ago, and over there, nothing, absolutely nothing. I played amateur there was nothing. I think in college, I was somewhat exposed to it at Providence, because my head coach's wife was a psychologist, so he kind of knew the importance of it, you know, and that's what we talk about in terms of just being aware and knowing about these things, where some college coaches, you know, back 8, 9 years ago had no idea, you know, that is such a huge part of us and of what you're trying to do on the field and performance in general. So certainly has differed a lot, and as I said, I think it's growing, it's getting better, where it is more and more popular in a sense to seek help and to reach out, but also the resources that are there certainly getting better and they're growing a lot.
I can't really speak to that very well.
I mean, you played soccer.
I did. Not at the same level, for sure. But you know, just to piggyback a little bit though on what Julian was saying, it's great that there's growing awareness and increasing availability of professionals, mental health professionals, who are available to athletes. But in the absence of that, it goes back to that really strong support network that athletes can have, as well as recognition among coaching staff, among trainers, and teammates even, of signs of mental health problems and ways to access resources and help for mental health issues. Can kind of fill the gap until we have a higher number of mental health professionals readily available for athletes.
I just want to add one thing. I think the big thing for us, and what I've kind of come across throughout the past years, is that, like you alluded to, that guys in the locker rooms and my former teammates, or even myself, everything that's kind of presented to us is, hey, reach out if you need help, reach out if you have issues, through the teams, whatever. We always thought that it would somehow come back to us in terms of like, hey, you're not fit to do this, why are you seeking help? We might not offer you this new contract, you might not get this new contract now, you know, you might, you know, be cut from the team even, or things like that, and those moments are scary, or those thoughts are scary to then really, you know, make that step, and then those really create a huge barrier for us to really do that. So as that kind of becomes more, just easier for us to access, it's really much easier for us to really then take that first step, and it becomes a much more freeing experience almost, rather than this really huge wall that's really there of like, oh, if I say the wrong thing to the wrong person, they will go back to the team, and then all of a sudden you won't have a contract, or you'll get cut, or, you know, these types of things are real thoughts that are really going through our heads and really play a big role. So that awareness and that openness and those services and opportunities for us to really step forward are really important.
We're just going to cut you out of this, Kristen. I'm sorry, but I was, as you were speaking, it also reminded me of your recent podcast, and I think when athletes like you speak out about this, it opens the door for so much for the next generation, for the young guys who are coming through the locker room to feel like, hey, this is something someone like Julian has experienced and talked about. I can talk about it too, or I can go to Julian because he's someone who's safe. He's someone who either gets it or will help me contact someone who can get it and provide that support. So that type of statement, and we see this in some other professional athletes. Kevin Love comes to mind, someone who was here in Miami. I'm sorry, I don't recall if he's still here in Miami.
I don't remember either.
Sorry, I follow soccer, not basketball. But a professional athlete who spoke out about some of these issues and anxiety as well. Michael Phelps can have so much more of an impact than someone like me sitting up here and talking about it. So thank you for doing that.
And perhaps introducing some of this earlier in youth sports would make professional athletes feel more comfortable because they saw it at 15 for the first time, right? Not at 27, it's a little bit different. So you've mentioned the support systems and resources that are currently available for athletes dealing with mental health issues. How effective are these resources, and what improvements do you think are needed, both of you?
So for this question, I kind of just want to lay out kind of just what I have, you know, the ability to go to in a sense, right? So MLS, Major League Soccer, is having a group of doctors they're called the soccer docs. They have a huge mental health part of that is a 24-hour service number that we can call, that we can reach out to, we can text. Really in regards to anything. If we have troubles off the field, if we go out partying, for example, or if we have trouble at home with the wife, like things like that, they can be reached, and that's the avenue I took. Earlier in the year, where they came in every preseason, they come in. So in January, they come in and do a meeting with us as a team, present kind of what they're doing, and for any new players, for any old returning players, it's a reminder. And that's when I first talked to the people, and then I was like, hey, I really think I could benefit from this. I've been struggling, I've been going through some stuff, and then it was like, okay, I have actually a really good person kind of in this market, and he then connected me to now my therapist, which was great way for us. And Inter Miami has over the last couple of months partnered with a company called On Rise. I don't know if anybody has heard of that one, but it's basically a company that has former professional athletes that are now not fully, people with degrees, or counselors or therapists or anything, but they have training in mental health, and they basically can relate to what you're going through as a professional athlete. So that is a number that we also can call whenever we want, and they will always be able to help us in a sense, and then if something was more serious, they would be able to refer us to counselors and therapists and so on. So that's something that Inter Miami has partnered with, where it's nice because that we're talking about that barrier and the confidentiality of it, right? This is a totally separate company with Inter Miami is just paying them a service. They're not in the building. They're really just there via Zoom and via phone, which sometimes is also a little bit of a challenge, but at least it's kind of offered and it's there. And then through the MLS PA, which is our Players Association, they also partnered with On Rise, which is kind of funny. But you also have that avenue where they have a mental health director full time there. I've been in touch with her. She's been great as well. So those are kind of the three different avenues that we can reach out to. And then obviously, guys in the locker room, the guys that like myself. I want to call myself one of those people that likes to get guys connected if they need help or anything like that. That you should always have those types of people, and your training staff will always be trained with that as well, to then refer you to the right people at the right time with whatever they think is best. And these are just the different avenues that kind of we have available to us to seek the help that we need, or be referred to somebody that then will help us.
That's great. That's really encouraging to hear those steps being taken by the league and by Inter Miami. And for those to be effective, there needs to be the right climate and culture, right? So guys in the locker room have to feel comfortable and believe that not only do I know the resources there, but I can reach out and take advantage of it without worrying about the potential repercussions of it, or how this might have a detrimental impact on my relationships with whoever, the coaching staff, the front office, other teammates. So it's even more encouraging to hear that it's with a company that is completely separate from the organization and can provide that level of confidentiality that is really important to facilitate openness to pursuing those resources.
Thank you both. Last question until I turn it over to the audience. How do you both believe that teams, leagues, and institutions could better support athletes' mental health? That's a really broad question.
I think panels like this, honestly, just more players that are willing to speak out, more professional athletes that are willing to speak out, more, people that kind of have gone through the experience themselves, that are just willing to open up, and be honest and really think of other people that might need it as well. The way I talked to my wife, for example, before the podcast recording, we knew it was Mental Health Awareness Month. We had gotten a fan question about mental health, and my producer was bringing it to me. He was like, hey, do you want to open up? Do you want to talk about this? And I talked to my wife for a little bit. I thought I had to think about it, you know, because it's not easy to just do that in front of, you know, the whole world in a sense, right? So ultimately I decided to do it because if I can help one person, then great. It's all worth it, you know, in my opinion. And that's how I do a lot of community stuff like that, with that thought in mind. If I can help the environment 0.25%, great, you know, whatever it is. And we are, yeah, sometimes we're put in this bucket, like we talked about before, where if you speak up about it more, people realize it maybe more, that, you know, there's avenues that can help you, you know, the normal person in a sense, right? And you don't have to be a professional pro athlete, and certainly not a perfect world that I'm living in, as we've, you know, feel like established by now. But you know, I'm privileged in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of people that aren't as privileged as I am, that aren't given opportunities, that are much worse off, but there's still avenues, there's still ways for those people to seek help, and that's something I wanted to promote, and that's something I think more people should promote in order to, yeah, really, you know, lessen that stigma even more and more, and really become more aware of kind of seeking the help and getting the help that people need to be in a good headspace and to be in a good, ultimately have a good life.
It's not easy to make yourself vulnerable in front of other people. It's really hard to do, but it's incredibly powerful, because what we know from the data is that at least 1 in 3 people are going through very similar types of experiences. And just having that first person step out and say, hey, I'm going through this, can really be a powerful way of opening the door to these types of conversations. And the more it's talked about, the more it just becomes part of the culture of, well, very broadly, but including in sports, within the locker room, the easier it's going to be for people to speak up and seek help. And I think we'll see kind of, instead of it coming from the top down, there may almost be a bottom up sort of effect, where some of the athletes themselves are driving organizations to take steps to promote mental health.
Well, as a psychologist and the parent of an aspiring athlete, I'd like to thank you for putting yourself out there, because it would make the conversation with my son easier, right? Like if he were ever struggling. So I do really appreciate that. At this point, we would like to open it up to questions from the audience. Anybody have a question? All right, I guess I'm going to pass out the microphone to you.
Hi, my name is Mari, and my question is, how do you think the conflict in locker rooms can affect the players mentally, both inside and outside the field?
The conflicts in the locker room, you say?
Yeah, like you guys have like this tension.
Yeah, I think it's almost separating kind of personal and what's happening on the field a little bit, where conflicts in the locker room sometimes arise. For us, to be fair, this year there haven't been too many, and it really hasn't gotten to a point where I was ever worried that we would lose the culture or anything like that. So things, disagreements and yeah, arguments happen. They're part of our sport because we are a team. You know, not everybody's going to be on the same page all the time. So understanding that, I think, is a big first step of just recognizing that you are a team, that you are made up of a bunch of different individuals. We're all different, we all have different thoughts, we all think different, we all have different stuff going on off the field. So understanding that type of, yeah, that is, I think, a big thing, where, you know, we don't ever take it too personal in a sense, right? We try to separate, like I said, the soccer part, where we talk about tactics, when we talk about what you should have done in this situation, what I should have done in this situation. And if it gets too personal, then we would step in and we would have different conversations about it. So there's really, you know, kind of that type of understanding within the team, that if it gets, you know, there's a certain line, and that line kind of shouldn't be crossed in a sense. And thankfully, I haven't experienced that in a long time, actually. So I'm really happy about that.
Any other questions from the audience? Don't be shy. Oh, I see one all the way in the back. I'm coming to you.
Hi, my name is Dustin West. I'm the athletic trainer here at FIU football. One question, you mentioned that you are in a lot of situations where you have to reach out to a sports psychologist or a general psychologist to get treatment. In your opinion, is it something where you would benefit from having a general psychology that's on the team and around the team and interacting with you guys more on a day-to-day basis, kind of like what your strength and conditioning coaches or athletic trainers are doing?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe not on a daily basis, but certainly my experience whenever we did have somebody, like I said at DC United, for example, we had somebody available that you could just go to, or she was, for example, meeting with younger players more often than with older players. But I think to have that type of resource available and kind of be almost forced in the situation a little bit, at least initially, helps, right? Because we talked about how that first step is so hard at times, where if that part is taken away from you almost, and even if you then after an hour or after half an hour you're like, I don't really need this, great, then at least you've tried, but there's going to be a lot of people that actually will have needed it, and I think to have something like that in place is certainly helpful. I think I was in Vancouver as well, where we were connected to the University of British Columbia, and they had Dr. Cox was his name, and he was this old guy that has been there forever, and he would also come in a couple times a week to just check in with guys. It's just about, hey, how are you, and type of like loose conversations almost, and he'd have a really good feel kind of for the players and stuff after a while. So those types of people just in and around the building, maybe not every day, so they're kind of in your face all the time, is might still be a little bit too much, but certainly a person that you can kind of come to and kind of have that trust with, I think is so important.
Well, it sounds like you're saying they need to be around enough for you to build rapport, but not be in your face. And we would hope one day that it might be just as easy for an athlete to access mental health services as it is to go to their athletic trainer, right? Right now, I'm sure players have no issues being like, my knee hurts or my ankle hurts, I need it taped up, right? But it's not as easy for them to have that same conversation and access those resources. Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? One of my students, come on. Hey, I've got a student. All right.
Hi, I'm Danielle. A question I wanted to ask you emphasized quite a lot about to your players about reaching out for help and mental health. Have you seen a profound effect among the players? For example, have a good majority of them been reaching out for help, and has it caused like a great performance while they're playing sports?
It's hard for me to answer because I'm not sure, honestly. I don't know how many other players on the team go through it. I don't know how many other players have reached out since I spoke out, for example. I don't know how many players use the service on Rise, which is, I think, a good thing, because I don't, if they don't want me to know, then, that's fine, and that's okay if they go through that themselves. I just hope that I can be an example of kind of, helping them almost make that first step. And if they do it, great. If, they feel like they don't need it, then it's also okay, for me. So I don't want to be like, hey, why don't you reach out, that type of thing, or have you reached out or anything like that. I think it's more so up to them. Everybody kind of still has to make their own decision on those things. But for me, it's helped tremendously, and not so much in terms of on-field performance, if I have to think about it, but in terms of being able to separate family life and sports much better. And therefore that helps me, channel, I think, things the right way when I'm there to work in the gym, when I'm there to work on the training field, when I'm there to play games. And it helps me be a better father and a better husband. And that's, for me, that's a little bit more important than actually being a good soccer player. Because that's ultimately who I am as a person. I'm much more than a professional athlete, and being a father and being a husband is number one and number two. So for me, to be aware of those things a bit more and be more mindful and being able to kind of channel those things, that's what really has helped me a lot, and that's what I'm so thankful for, that I've taken the step, because my children are so young still, so I have so much more life with them together, and to realize that now is like almost such a big blessing for me. to really have the next years to really even work on myself more, to do that even more, you know, and that's how it has helped me. That's really all I can speak to, because I don't know how other guys are doing.
One last call for questions. Oh, we have another one.
Another question that I have is, how do you think that injuries affect the mental health of players? Especially like big injuries.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good topic. Something that we haven't really spoken about, and injuries are a huge part of our sport, huge part of any sport, huge part of a professional athlete. We're all scared of them, to be honest, and thankfully I haven't had to deal with any long-term ones there. Yeah, you know, but yeah, if you're injured and you can't do the thing that you know you're supposed to do, or that you get paid to do, or that you love, you know, I love playing soccer. If I was, because of an injury, I wouldn't be able to do that, I think that would be a huge different challenge for me to kind of deal with. And dealing with those emotions, dealing with those feelings, being able to feel them and then, you know, heal them, and then in a sense, right, or accept them for what it is. I think that is very important. And you know, we talk about this, the question of having mental health professionals available to us more. I think in terms of injury, it would even be more helpful. You know, to kind of have, especially if it's a long-term injury, like you talk about ACLs, Achilles, those types of things, fractures, whatever it is, but to have, you know, the resources available to have not just your knee in recovery, but also kind of your mental state and your mental health in that sense is maybe helps the other recovery as well. So I think it's so important to kind of put an even bigger emphasis on that when that happens.
Am I allowed to ask a question? No, actually, I'm really glad you asked the question about injuries, and it was fascinating to hear your response to it. And it made me wonder, with an audience largely of future mental health providers who may work with athletes, in addition to in the wake of injuries, are there other particular times or transition periods among athletes where we as mental health providers should really be attuned and aware of, you know, this might be a time when someone may be most in need of some help?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've talked about how my life has happened over the last 3 years, where I was traded from one day to the next from DC to Vancouver, which is across the continent, you know, a different country. My daughter was 1.5. We had such a good life in DC. We liked it a lot in terms of family, and then all of a sudden, you know, you have to move. You have to move because they just tell you to. You know, that's American sports, how trades just happen like that, and that didn't matter that I didn't really want to go. You know, and in those types of situations, those are times where the stress is a bit higher. You know, where you go through a lot. We talked about the time where you know, the contracts run out, injuries. You know, I think those are the times where, you know, you have so much happen in your life that it's really, really important. Like right now for me, it's almost an easy time because I just signed a new contract here, obviously for 3 more years. So I know that I have 3 more years of guaranteed money coming in. We had just gotten here to Inter Miami, where I feel like we're, you know, hopefully staying for a little bit longer than just 6 months or a year. And my wife was we just had the second kid. She's 11 months old now. Everything's healthy, everything's happy, and you know, we're kind of just living a great life right now. So right now is almost a little bit easy, and a really good time actually for me to go through this, to really learn about myself more and to work up some stuff from the past, from when I was a kid and all these types of things. And but there's certainly times, you know, when you know, turmoil is happening all around you and you're being thrown into different situations that you don't necessarily want to be in. That's when I think times are definitely a bit more important to be able to seek help and to have somebody else that can help you through that.
Thank you so much. By having these conversations, hopefully, you know, leaders, coaches, players, athletes, they can reach everyone. So thank you so much for that. I think that concludes our event today. Thank you all for coming. A big thank you to you, Julian. A big thank you to you, Dr. Pettit. And thank you for all for being here. Have a lovely day.